Jai Shri Prabhupada ki. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari. Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Prajajana Ranjana. Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Prajajana Ranjana. Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari. 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 Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jai Shri Shri Radha Madhav ki. Jai Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Mai ki. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki. Jai Srila Gurudeva ki. Ananta Kodi Vaishnavrinda ki. Nitai Gaura Premanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we read today from chapter 7 of Bhagavad Gita. The text is 22. Sathaya Shraddhaya Yukta तस्याराधनमीहति लभते च तथा कामान् मायैव विहतान् हितान् सातया श्रद्धया युक्तः तस्याराधनम् ईहते लभते च तथा कामान् मायैव विहतान् हितान् सातया श्रद्धया युक्तः तस्याराधनमीहते लभते च तथा कामान् मायैव विहतान् हितान्. प्रभुस साधया श्रद्धया युक्तः तस्याराधनमीहते लभते च तथा कामान् मायैव विहतान्. माताजी सतया श्रद्धया युक्तः लभते च ततः कामान् मयैव विहितान् हितान्. सतया श्रद्धया युक्तः तस्याराधनमीहते लभते च तथा कामान् मयैव विहितान् हितान्. Saha, he, taya, with that, shraddhaya, inspiration, yuktaha, endowed, tasya, of that demigod, aradhanam, for the worship, ihate, he aspires, labhate, obtains, cha, and tataha, from that, kaman, his desires, maya, by me, eva, alone, vihitan, arranged, he, certainly, tan, those. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. Please repeat the translation. Endowed with such a faith, he endeavors to worship a particular demigod and obtains his desires. But in actuality, these benefits are bestowed by me alone. Please hear the purport. The demigods cannot award benediction to their devotees without the permission of the Supreme Lord. The living entity may forget that everything is the property of the Supreme Lord, but the demigods do not forget. So the worship of demigods and achievement of desired results are due not to the demigods, but to the Supreme Personality of Godhead by arrangement. The less intelligent living entity does not know this, and therefore he foolishly goes to the demigods for some benefit. But the pure devotee, when in need of something, prays only to the Supreme Lord. Asking for material benefit, however, is not a sign of a pure devotee. A living entity goes to the demigods usually because he is mad to fulfill his lust. This happens when something undue is desired by the living entity and the Lord himself does not fulfill the desire. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is said that one who worships the Supreme Lord and at the same time desires material enjoyment is contradictory in his desires. Devotional service to the Supreme Lord and the worship of a demigod cannot be on the same platform, because worship of a demigod is material and devotional service to the Supreme Lord is completely spiritual. For the living entity who desires to return to Godhead, material desires are impediments. A pure devotee of the Lord is therefore not awarded the material benefits desired by less intelligent living entities, who therefore prefer to worship demigods of the material world rather than engage in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapada Kamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Gunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavanishwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaure Tvishe Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patittanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So in this verse, which follows very closely the verse before, we find actually in the previous verse Krishna is saying a very important fact. He's actually saying that he actually creates faith in other living entities who have a taste for satisfaction of their material desires. And therefore, when they want to obtain some form of satisfaction of their material desires, Krishna creates faith in their hearts towards the Devatas, towards the demigods. This itself tells us one very important point. Krishna, de facto, does not want to create faith in material benefits in his devotees. He would rather not do that because he understands Nunam pramattam kurute vikarma. This is a very important point in Bhagavad Gita. It's in Bhagavatam, 554 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Nunam pramattam. Pramattam means mad, right? Vikarma means activities which are completely sinful and which actually bind us to this material world. So actually, every time we want to perform an activity which has nothing to do with the spiritual benefits that we should receive as devotees, then those material benefits, they may look very nice, they may look very attractive, but ultimately they bind us to the material world. So instead of that, Krishna, as the verse tells us before, Krishna creates faith in these Devatas. And many of us went through that spiritual journey, actually. So many of us would have known that very often we would approach so many Devatas for so many material benefits. And sometimes when we got tired of the material benefits, then we prayed to the Devatas, is there something more than material benefits, right? But very often this was the way we worked. Now in today's verse, you find actually that here Krishna continues. Krishna says that once they get this faith, in other words, the moment they are endowed with this faith, then Krishna says what happens is that that particular entity will start worshipping a particular Devata or demigod. And he will worship that person through the power of his independence. And that is also a very important point Prabhupada brought about in the previous verse. All of us have our free will. Nobody forced anybody to come today. I hope not. I hope nobody forced anyone, right? Okay, Prabhus, can you move forward? And Mataji's also, you can move forward. It's easier because many devotees are coming in now. Yeah, come forward, come forward. Plenty of space. It's so nice to see everybody's face now, right? So I can tell whether you are angry with me or you disapprove of the point or you feel this is nonsense. It shows on your face. You see whether you like it or not. It's there. Come, you can come forward. That'll be nice. Oh, I see that Malini is here today. Jai, Malini ki. Very nice to see her. She's possibly the youngest member, I think, at this moment in our community. Very nice. And happy to see you, Anand Prabhu. And where is Champak Gopika Mataji? Hare Krishna, very happy to see you also. So nice. Seeing you all, I'm just reminded to inform you all very quickly that Gauranga Prabhu has confirmed that he will come to Singapore. He's coming on 17, 18, 19, 20th of November. Okay, so we still have some time to plan nice programs with him. He's fixed it. It's nice. It's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So we'll have wonderful time. And just before him, we have Romapad Maharaj. And then after that, before that, we have Chaitanya Charan Prabhu. So we have some really wonderful devotees lined up to come to Singapore. Look forward to more of the association. So when a devotee is endowed with the faith that Krishna gives him, that devotee also has what we call independence. And we all know, right, that when we are given independence, we tend to exercise it in an independent manner. That's why Krishna gives us independence. The moment we have that independence, so if someone wants to satisfy himself or a material desire that he has or she has, then what happens is, Prabhupada tells us, Krishna sanctions it. This is a very important point. A Devata cannot fulfill the material desire of a living entity. The Devata can only fulfill the material desire of a living entity if Krishna actually sanctions that desire. This is a very important point. In 13.23 of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is known as Upadrishta Anumantaha. He is the overseer and he is the permitter. In other words, without him, nothing can move. That's why so many times Prabhupada has said, not even a blade of grass can move if Krishna does not sanction it. This is very important because if we don't understand that, we will mistakenly think that the Devatas are acting independently to give whatever fulfillment of material desires that we have. But they themselves are not independent, and even the fulfillment of that material desire actually must go through the sanction of Krishna. So Krishna is just like this big immigration checkpoint authority. Very easy. That idea is very easy. If you want to come to Singapore, whether you are murderer, you are thief, you are terrorist, of course we don't want such people to come in, and you're a devotee or you're sadhu, Everybody needs the sanction of the authority. Isn't it true? In other words, you need to bring your passport, they need to chop, and then you can come into Singapore. What you do in Singapore, that's your independence, right? You want to do something funny and end up in jail, that's up to you. If you want to do something good, then that's fine, that's also up to you. But for you to get through, it still is needed, the sanctioning is still needed. So that must be very clear. Krishna's sanctions, in one of the famous purports in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada writes amazingly that a thief wants to enter the house of someone. And what does the thief do? The thief enters to break in, correct? Now Krishna, as the super soul, actually he inspires the thief as super soul to enter. In other words, he sanctions that thief. And once the thief has been sanctioned to enter, Krishna inspires the person who is the householder or the owner of the property to also wake up and make sure that he's alert that there is a thief. Both of them require sanctioning authority. They both require sanctioning authority. Okay? I think we have a potential donor here. No? He keeps looking at this. By the way, this is a donation box, Prabhu's Mataji's. It's not a coffin or anything. Yeah, it's a big donation box. This is a very small one. I'm just hoping that, the way this was filled up, this needs a lot more filling if you realize, because it's really deep, right? So if you get my drift, we have to really pray, that Jagannath will receive more and more of our Lakshmi so that we can continue with nice activities. That also requires his sanction. See? So when we are performing a service, what allows us to walk up? His sanction. When we want a material benefit, what allows us to even get that benefit? His sanction. What allows the Devata to award us that benefit? Again, Krishna's sanction. Everyone must pass through the sanctioning authority. Everyone needs to hold up his passport to Krishna. And everyone needs a chop from Krishna. If Hiranyakashipu wanted material benefits, he didn't turn to Krishna. Why? Because in his heart of hearts, he knew so much Vedic knowledge. He knew that Krishna never awards material benefits, not to a demon like him. So Prabhupada says, those who are driven by lust, what do? They actually turn towards the Devatas, hoping that they can get away with it. Some devotees tell me, Prabhu, when I want to feel very pure, I come and pray to Krishna. When I want a lottery or I need some money, right, I go and pray to someone else, and hope that will happen. And ask them why. Then they tell me, because I'm shy to approach Krishna. But Krishna knows about it. He knows you went there. First of all, he's in your heart. He knows where you go. And second, whatever you pray to the Devata, Devatas will say, thank you, I've received your prayer. Now let me go and ask Krishna about your prayer. So it's very embarrassing. Even if you go to anyone else for material benefit, it all goes back to Krishna for sanctioning. You see? That's how the universe works. But because we don't have an understanding of that, we don't realize that even behind the Devatas, Krishna is Upadrishta and he's Anumantaha. So that person worships the Devata and he obtains a material desire. He thinks the desire is being fulfilled by the Devata and he becomes very happy. But Krishna says here, actually, that devotee or that person who's turning to the Devata, that Devata himself has no authority, no capacity, no power to grant anyone these benefits. So this is a very important point for us to remember. So these benefits, who are they coming from? They're actually coming from Krishna. They're actually coming from Krishna. We should think about it actually. Because so often, we turn to someone else for material benefits, but we don't realize that actually Krishna is the one who is giving everything to us. If he's the source of all material and spiritual worlds, what's that important verse? Aham sarvasya prabhavo, isn't it? The first Chatushloka of Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is the source of all material and spiritual worlds. Not just spiritual, but material. So the Devatas themselves derive all their powers from Krishna. And this they themselves say it. We are not saying it. In the 6th canto, 9th chapter, there are two very important verses. In the 6th canto, 9th chapter, 25th verse. This point that Prabhupada speaks about in the purport is given by Bhagavatam. Remember, there's nothing in any of Prabhupada's purport that isn't coming from Bhagavatam. In fact, every line, if you wanted to, you could find a verse. You could find a verse for every single line that Prabhupada brings up. And the point that Prabhupada brings up here about the Devatas having no authority, but the authority coming from Krishna, is, I believe, in 6.9.25. Ya eka isho nijamaya yadanaha sasarjayena anusjama vishwam vayam nayasyapi puraha samihitaha Pashyamalingam pritak isha maninaha. This pritak isha maninaha is very important. The translation is very nice. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Devatas, by the way, they are praying to Krishna. Why? Because Vritasur has appeared. 6th canto. Vritasur, this powerful demon, right, has come now to avenge the killing of his brother Vishwarupa. And his father Twashta was very upset. So he created the demon Vritasur, who would become the enemy of Indra. Very important. So Vritasur came to the battlefield, and Bhagavatam tells us he was so powerful on the battlefield that actually all the Devatas who were in front of Indra, with Indra, when they saw Vritasur literally smashing everything, they all ran away, leaving Indra alone on the battlefield. Not a very palatable situation. Huh? You're with the Devatas and suddenly you're alone. But he was all alone, but the Devatas then decided they had no choice. They had to pray. And so they started their prayers. What was the aim of the Devatas' prayers? This is very important. The aim of the Devatas' prayers was for Vritasur to be killed. This is an important point. That was the aim. But as they start their praying, they are very humble. And therefore they tell Krishna something very important. They say, Krishna, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And you have created us by what? Your external potency. Very important. Krishna has created the Devatas not even from his internal potency. Sometimes we forget, a question may be asked, by what potency are the Devatas created? It's very clear. Because they are also part of this material creation. They are created by the external energy of Krishna. Then they go on to say, by your mercy, we expand this creation. So it appears as if Surya is the sun. It appears as if Chandra is the moon. It appears as if Lord Shiva is a Guna avatar in charge of destruction, and Brahmaji has created this material universe. But actually the truth of the matter is, as Bhagavatam tells us, by Krishna's mercy, all these Devatas, they are expanding this creation. In other words, they are sub-creators. They are secondary creators. They are empowered by Krishna. Prabhupada calls the Devatas administrative heads of the divisions of creation. So just like, any organization has administrative heads. Where do they get their power? They get it from the top. They are empowered. So the Devatas are also empowered. And they say that they can create and expand because Krishna is always in their hearts as the super soul. Very important point. Always in their hearts as super soul. Not just in our hearts, but also in their hearts. But now the Devatas admit one very important point. They say that even then, we cannot see his form. We cannot see his form. Why? Pashyamalingam pritak isha maninaha. Why? Because all of us think that we are separate and we are independent. And we are gods, isn't it? With a small g. Separate and independent gods. That's what the Devatas think they are. They admit it. And if you look at the purport, the first line is all you need to know in the purport. Prabhupada says in the first line, here is an explanation why the conditioned soul cannot see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. So the next time someone comes up to us and say, why I cannot see Krishna face to face? 6.9.25. First purport, first line of Srila Prabhupada. And the Devatas say it because we think we are independent. That's the problem with us. We think we are independent. The Devatas also admit that very often we think we are independent. Indra thought he was independent of Krishna, and that's why when Indra Puja was stopped in Krishna book, what happened? Indra became very upset because he thought that I am actually the person to whom they should all be praying to. That's what he thought. Brahmaji, you remember in the 10th canto, isn't it? 13, 14, 14th chapter, 15th chapter. He stole the calves and the boys and hid them in the caves for a year because he thought his energy was so powerful that Krishna would be lost without them. And let's see how Krishna manages this. I don't know what got into his head actually, because Brahma is the creator. But it's nice to know that, because if Brahma can do this, then what are we, We are doing this every day, thinking I'm in charge, I'm in charge, I'm in charge. But what are we in charge of? We are not in charge of anything. So Brahma then, he had to learn the hard way. Because 1 year later when Brahmaji, and what is 1 year for Brahmaji? It's hardly even a minute. 1 year when he came back, he saw, wait a minute, there were the gopas, there were the calves. And then he looked into the cave and they were all still sleeping. So he thought, how is this possible? And then Krishna, by his internal potency, allowed him to see that every calf and every gopa was a manifestation of the Supreme Lord. Supreme Lord. And then Brahma came to his senses. So the Devatas are showing us in 6.9.25 that actually, frankly speaking, whatever benefits we want from them, they cannot give us anything because they are not independent. And most importantly, they are not separate. But they think they are sometimes. So if they think they are, how much more dangerous it must be for us, Prabhus and Matajis. The Devatas are so much more exalted than us. Don't forget that. And if they can sometimes come to a point where they think they are independent, then how much in trouble we must be. This is an important point. So it is very clear from 6.9.25 what is happening. And the Devatas themselves admit it very nicely. Srila Prabhupada's purport is very clear. Prabhupada says, without the permission of the Devatas, nothing can be awarded as a benediction. And when the Devatas do give it also, very often, after giving the material benediction, they sometimes regret it also. You remember in Krishna book, towards the end of Krishna book, there was a demon known as Vrikasur. And Vrikasur, the problem with him was he was praying, he was a great devotee of Lord Shiva, but he wanted a material benediction. And his austerity was so powerful that Lord Shiva was not appearing before him, and he started cutting off pounds of his flesh. It's not easy, yeah? It's very easy to sit down and do Mangalarati, but someone tells you during Mangalarati you have to cut yourself, Prabhu. When you come here, you have to chop some flesh and give it to Jagannath. I don't think we'll come back again. So at least give some credit to the demon. It's not easy to do this. He started cutting off flesh from himself, and he was going to cut off his head. And Prabhupada says this is what demons do. They're so foolish, they don't realize if they cut off their head, even if the Devata appeared, they can't speak to the Devata, isn't it? There's nothing left. But he was ready to cut off his head. Lord Shiva is Asutosh. And Asutosh appeared as Lord Shiva, of course, and he said, don't do all this. Tell me what you want. And he said that I want the boon that whoever I put my hand on that head, that person must die. People have really strange desires in this world. You think about it. Imagine you pray very hard to a Devata, he appears before you, and what do you ask? If I put my hand on anyone's head, they must die. It's very strange. It's probably easier to ask for money than to ask for these things. But Vrikasur wanted to be powerful. So Lord Shiva said, that's not difficult, I'll give you that benefit. So Vrikasur, immediately when he got that benefit, what did he do? He reached out to Lord Shiva and he wanted to put his hand on his head. And Lord Shiva said, what are you doing? He said, I'm just testing whether it's real or not. And Lord Shiva was forced to run because obviously what he gave him was real. And so Lord Shiva started running everywhere. And Vrikasur started chasing him. It's a ridiculous situation. You pray to a Devata, get the material benefit, and then you want to harm the Devata. So you see, when we have a lust for material desires, that lust makes us lose our common sense. It becomes what we call in Bhagavatam bewilderment of memory. Do not think that as devotees we are free of this. Material desires, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, can come out very subtly. Maybe we have given up this idea that we want to put our hand on someone's head, and kill somebody. But in our heart, we may have subtle desires for pride, name, fame, adoration. All this are also material desires. But because we have become devotees, externally we look like devotees, right? So we must at least put up some kind of behavior. And then what happens is we are very careful in a sophisticated manner to hide these things. Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes extensively on this to tell us what cheating mentality we have actually. Even as devotees putting on tilak, dhoti, kurta, still we want to cheat Krishna. And therefore, what to speak of people like Vrikasur. So Lord Shiva ran and ran and ran. He didn't know where to go. And finally, when Lord Vishnu saw that Lord Shiva, who is so dear to Krishna, was in trouble, he himself came. And he said, how can I help you? What's happened? And Lord Shiva was really embarrassed. He said, I gave a material benefit, but now it's coming to harm me. And so Lord Vishnu told him, don't worry, I'll handle this situation. So he took the guise of a Brahmana. And the Brahmana intercepted Vrikasur and said, stop, what are you running for? And he said, I'm running after Lord Shiva. He's rascal number one. Why? What did Lord Shiva do to you? He said he's running because he must have given me a false boon. Why? Because when I wanted to test what he gave me, he started running away. Someone will only run away when they know it doesn't work. This is the thinking of demons, you see. He didn't think that he's going to run away because he was going to be killed. He thought, oh, you must be cheating me. When you cheat someone, you see the whole world as cheating you. Have you noticed that? If you think you are very smart, then the whole world you think is also very smart and trying to outsmart you. Whatever we see, Bhagavatam says, is actually a projection of what we are. That's why someone who criticizes and finds fault with everyone is himself or herself faulty. But because they cannot project their faults on themselves, because it hurts their own self-esteem, they project it on everybody else. And that's why we become impatient with people. You see, Vrikasur had no ability to be patient. What does Rupa Goswami tell us is one of the most important qualities of a devotee? Patience. Dhairya, patience. Patience. And yet as devotees, we become so impatient with each other. We give people deadlines. We tell them, you don't do this. Oh, you're very late. And how come you're not advancing? Where is the patience? This is demonic mentality. And that's why Vrikasur, that's why Hiranyakashipu, that's why Ravana, they had no patience. They just wanted everything. It is a symbol of lust, you see. So Vrikasur was told by the Brahmana, hold on, let's do one thing. If you think it is not correct, and that's why Lord Shiva is running away from you, what's the point of running after him? There is one way to definitely test whether it's working. And Vrikasur said, tell me, how is it possible? Just put it on your own head. If it works, well, you know it. And of course, demons are not very bright. And so Vrikasur was thinking, this is very nice. It's a very smart thing. Let's do one thing. I'll just put it on my own head. And that's what he did. And he instantly died. So sometimes Bhagavatam tells us that Devatas also, when they give a material benefit, they don't benefit from it. Sometimes they get into so much trouble because of it. Brahmaji was approached by Hiranyakashipu because he wanted to become immortal. But Brahmaji had to politely decline that because he said, I'm very, very sorry, I cannot give you immortality because I'm not immortal myself. Isn't it true? He's not immortal. So what can he do? So he could only give him that long list that Hiranyakashipu said. I don't want to be killed by man, by animal, day or night, inside, outside. He put everything he could into his insurance policy, but it didn't work in the end, right? There's no insurance policy against Krishna. So my point is, and what Prabhupada is telling us, that very often the Devatas may award material benefit, but if they are truly in charge of the material benefit, they should not be burnt by the material benefit. Isn't it true? But the fact that they can be burnt shows us that they don't have the power in the first place. Lord Shiva gave so much benediction to Banasura because Banasura was worshipping him. And Lord Shiva thought he was a great devotee. Until Banasura, decided that he would wage war against Krishna and with the demons on his side. And Lord Shiva became very morose when he realized that this was the attitude of Banasura. So very often, even though great demons worship or even living entities want material benefits from Devatas, there are so much of limitations to it. So much of limitations. Because they themselves require that potency. The second point Prabhupada brings up in the purport is very important. Prabhupada says in the purport that there is a difference, however, between the Devatas and the living entities. Let's not now start thinking, oh, the Devatas are useless. They are just like us. They are born of external energy. They are just empowered. We are not, but they are just empowered. So actually they don't have any power. That tendency may be there. But Prabhupada writes in the purport, there is a difference between us and the Devatas. And that difference is, while we consider all the property that we have as ours, Prabhupada says, the Devatas always do not think that way. The Devatas never forget that the property that they have, or whatever powers that they have, which they think is their property, is actually belonging to Krishna. Sometimes they may forget, like Indra forgot, Brahma forgot, but very quickly they were checked, because in their hearts they are devotees. This is a very important point. And because they don't forget, that is why they are empowered by Krishna. Krishna rewards a living entity who has faith in them. Why is it that they cannot forget that everything belongs to Krishna? Because they have faith in Krishna. When we have faith, and if our faith is strong, then it is very easy for us to be able to actually grow exponentially and parallelly our faith with the idea and realization that nothing belongs to us. Very often we don't realize that these two are connected. Sometimes we think, how do I cultivate this mood of detachment, that everything belongs to Krishna? But Bhagavatam tells us that we will learn that everything does not belong to Krishna when we increase our faith in Him. The Devatas increase, they have great faith in Krishna. That is why automatically they are not attached to property. We may be thinking as devotees, we are not attached to property, we are very simple people. But we may be very attached to our service. We may be thinking, this is my service, and someone comes and takes that service, I'm not happy. Why? Because we think that's my property. But if we have faith in Krishna, then we would realize that even our service has an expiry date, and that expiry date is up to Krishna. Why do you think that we should be holding on to a service for the rest of our life? That service is also coming from Krishna. The Devatas have that mood. The residents of Vrindavan, they are completely transcendental, and that's why they never think anything belongs to them. Anything that they have belongs to Krishna and is used for Krishna's service. That is why that is a reflection of their deep faith in Krishna. When you have time, you should look at 8, 9, 28 of Srimad Bhagavatam. In 8, 9, 28, Ajitananda Prabhu, please be seated, Prabhu. Please, you should not be standing. No? We want to welcome Ajitananda Prabhu. He's a wonderful brahmachari and devotee traveling through Singapore. He always does, but today I have the great fortune of seeing him also. Please be seated, Prabhu. In 8, 9, 28, the Devatas, are churning the ocean of milk. And as they were churning, who was on the other side? The demons. Devatas on this side. And as they were churning, what happened? You all know, so many items came from the churning of the milk ocean. And every time something came up, right, the Devatas were very attracted to it. But they remembered the instruction of Krishna, who told them that whatever that comes up, right, do not go after it. Let the demons take it, let anyone else take it, that's okay, but we don't have to take it. Very important. So then what happened? Matajis, there are some space in front. In case you want to come, there's space in front. So what happened was, the Devatas, they obeyed Krishna. This is very important quality of a Devata, something we can learn from, obeying Krishna. They obeyed. You know how difficult it is, Prabhus and Matajis, when you are supposed to be churning the milk ocean and wonderful things come up, you will be very distracted. And Krishna's final instruction was the most difficult. When Amrit comes, don't be in a hurry to get it. And the Devatas were thinking, when Amrit comes, definitely we have to catch it. That's the goal of our churning. But Krishna said, be patient. Be patient. Again, patience. And so when Amrit finally came, the Devatas didn't snatch it. The demons snatched it. But they remembered Krishna's instruction. And because they remembered Krishna's instruction, because they had faith in Krishna, that is why they were awarded Amrit, which is, by the way, a material benefit. Even the Devatas pray to Krishna for material benefit sometimes, isn't it? We pray to Devatas, Devatas pray to Krishna. So you can see who is the source of everything. It's still Krishna. So then it is nicely stated in this shloka. What is that shloka? Evam suragana samadesha kala hetvarta karma matayopi fale vikalpaha tatramritam suragana phalam anjasapur yatpada pankaja raja shranayana daityaha. The meaning is very beautiful. The place, the time, the cause, the purpose, the activity, and the ambition, 6 things. They were all the same for both the demigods and the demons. But the demigods achieved one result, and the demons achieve another. In fact, they achieve no result. Why? Because the demigods are always under the shelter of the dust of the Lord's lotus feet. They could very easily drink the nectar. The demons, however, not having sought shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord, they were unable to achieve the result they desired. What a nice point. So what is the difference between Devatas and the demons? They have faith in Krishna. But they were awarded material benefit. But Krishna is so kind that if one has faith, Krishna still takes care of that person. So that is why Prabhupada writes in the purport here that the Devatas actually never forget their place. That is an important thing. We forget our place very often, but they are still very exalted devotees. And that is why they triumphed. And that is why actually always you see the Devatas are always running after Krishna. We run much less after Krishna than the Devatas. When Krishna was going to appear in this world, and he had appeared from the mind of Vasudeva into his heart, and then from the heart transferred to mind, and from mind transferred to Devaki, and then he appeared in the womb of Devaki, and it was shining and effulgent. What happened, if you remember? All the Devatas came down and they chanted the famous Purusha Sukta prayers. So whenever Krishna comes, they have so much faith in Krishna. They see him as the Samam Bonam, the Otam Protam. So they all come. In fact, if you remember, when Jagannath's pastime was there, you remember when Jagannath was in the form of Neela Madhav at that time? When Neela Madhav was there, who was it? Vishwavasu, right? And Vidyapati, right? They were there and they were going to pray, but they were waiting behind the branches. Why? Because the Devatas had come down and they were performing Gora Arati. They were actually performing Arati for Neela Madhav. Isn't it? What is that? Jiva Boshi Ache Gora Chan Radna Simhasani Arati Ko Ero Brahma Adi Devagane. What is that? That's our Gaura Arati, isn't it? When we sing Gaura Arati, in that stanza, it is very clearly stated that Lord Chaitanya has sat down on a jewel throne, and the demigods, headed by Lord Brahma, they are performing the Arati ceremony. They are also performing the Arati ceremony. So it is very clear that the Devatas, they know their place. And that's why they are always running after Krishna. It's very important now to understand that when a sincere soul approaches anyone, especially Devatas, when they approach the Devatas, very often the Devatas also do not just give them material benefit. The Devatas also award them spiritual benefit. And that is why they are devotees. In the 477 purport of Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhu, you don't have to go into that, I'm just saying it. You'll find there's a very important story, and you've heard this story many times. There was a Brahmana who wanted the highest possible happiness. And so he ran to Lord Shiva and he prayed to him and said, grant me the greatest benediction that I can get. And Lord Shiva, instead of giving him a material benediction, what did he do? He said, go to who? Go to Sanatana Goswami. And he will give you the benediction that you will get. And what was that benediction he wanted? He wanted a touchstone, Chintamani. You know this Chintamani, right? It has the ability to turn any metal instantly into gold. Very useful, right? Think about it. If you had Chintamani, how rich we will all become, you know. Of course, some devotees will say, Prabhu, I'm praying for Chintamani so that when I get money, I can put it into this nice ondil and I can give all my money to Krishna. Let's see. But anyway, this is what the Brahmana thought. All right, I will go and see Sanatana Goswami. So by the mercy of Lord Shiva, he got in touch with a pure devotee, Sanatana Goswami. And when he went to see Sanatana Goswami said, you want the touchstone, right? You see that garbage there? It's amidst the garbage. Go and find the touchstone. Brahmana, very happy. He got the touchstone. He was about to leave. But then he thought to himself, wait a minute. If the touchstone is the most valuable thing and gives the highest benediction, why in the world is Sanatana Goswami keeping a touchstone in a garbage dump? At least he had some intelligence. Where do you think the intelligence came from? Krishna. Krishna, again the sanctioner. And how do you think he came to this position? By the mercy of Lord Shiva. A Devata, but a very powerful devotee of the Lord. See? And so Sanatana Goswami then blessed him when he came back and said, what is the meaning of this? And he granted him the benefit of devotional service. And the Brahmana rejected the touchstone because it was not important to him. So the Devatas are so wonderful that they don't give us name and fame. If we really pray to Krishna and we are devotees, the Devatas, they are also friendly to us. They will also help us. In Bhagavatam, so many times, we see that the great devotees of the Lord, they sometimes turn to the Devatas just for additional support. Rukmini Mata would go to the temple of Ambika, and then Krishna kidnapped her. The gopis prayed to goddess Katyani so that they would have Krishna as their husband, right? So it is not that we condemn Devatas. We should be very careful when we become devotees, not to become so arrogant that we think the Devatas are nothing. Prabhupada says they do not forget what they want, and they want Krishna, and they know nothing belongs to them. But the important thing for us to remember in this shloka is that Krishna empowers the Devatas. Why? Because of their devotional service. Please remember that. They are empowered because of their devotional service, not because of anything else. And because of that, he gives them name and fame. That's why many of these Devatas are very powerful. But they themselves accept readily that without Krishna, they cannot do anything. Krishna is the shelter of all shelters. There's the nice verse in 6.9.22 of Bhagavatam. Avismitam tam paripurna kamam swaneva labena samam prashantam vinopasapati aparam hi balishaha swalangulena atititarti sindhum. Very nice verse. Again the Devatas pray and they say, Krishna, you are free from all material conception and you are never wonderstruck by anything. Krishna was never wonderstruck when Indra poured rain into Vrindavan. He was not wonderstruck when the calves and the gopas were stolen by Brahma. It was nothing to him, nothing. So he's never wonderstruck. Then the Devatas go on to pray, Krishna, you are samam prashantam. You're always happy. That is why when devotees pray to Krishna, you realize generally devotees are a happy lot. They're always very happy. If a devotee is morose, then something must be wrong. Devotees should be happy because Krishna is always happy. They are very happy because Krishna is happy. And then the Devatas say, Krishna has no material designation. That's why he's happy. So the next time you become irritated with someone, angry with someone, if you want to know why you are angry, it's because you have material designation in your heart. Don't blame others. Stop the blame game. Look to your own heart and understand the reason why I'm angry with someone is because I'm attached to some material designation and I'm not getting it. And that is why I'm frustrated. But Krishna is not like that. And the devotees, if we are really truly devotees, we will not be attached to the designation. We will just do devotional service. Did Druva Maharaj sign up to become a life member before he became a devotee? Is he a life member? Is Nrsimhadev, is Prahlad Maharaj a life member of iskcon? He's not. They were not life members. Did they have some name and fame before they came to Krishna? No. They were very simple. Sudama, did he go there to say to Krishna that Krishna, I'm your friend, you must remember me, now give me everything? He asked for nothing. So material designation is something very dangerous. And that's why in the shloka, we understand the subtlety of how we become connected to Krishna. And finally, they say something very important. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the only shelter of everyone. Anyone desiring to be protected by others is certainly a fool. So the Devatas themselves say, excuse me, if you want to be protected by Krishna, be protected only by Krishna. If you want us to protect you, you are quite foolish. And then they say something very nice. A fool tries to cross the sea by doing what? Holding on to the tail of a dog. Sometimes my Guru Maharaj said that sometimes you have a pet dog and you throw a stick in the water, the dog swims a bit. And then you think, oh, this fellow can swim. I can't swim. So if I want to cross, I'll hold his tail and I'll swim. But actually the dog only swam 3 meters. Your lake is 10, 20 meters. And foolishly you thought, oh, this one can swim. So what we do, we hold the tail of the dog. Dog drowns, you drown. And this is what Bhagavatam is saying. So do we want to drown? Whose lotus feet should we hold? Dhrita harihi. We should hold. Dhrita means to hold tightly. Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra means one who's holding very tightly to property. That's why his name is Dhritarashtra. I don't know how they gave names to children when they were so young, knowing that he will become just like that. Quite amazing if you think about it. Huh? How amazing, Dhritarashtra. And he turned out like that, But Brahmaji prays that I should become Dhrita Harihi. I should hold on tightly to the lotus feet of Krishna. It's a nice name, Dhrita Harihi. Hold on tightly to the lotus feet of Hari. So the Devatas are saying, don't hold on to our tails, because we are holding on to the tail of Krishna. Better you hold the tail of Krishna. Why this, in between and all? Why you want somebody in between? In India, whenever you have a go-between, what happens? This happens, isn't it? You will lose more of that. But if you have direct access, then have direct access. What is wrong? That is what they are saying, you see. So that is why in Bhagavatam, it is so nicely stated that direct access to Krishna is all we need. Do you know Gajendra, the elephant in the 8th canto? He was so tied up and circumstantially helpless because he was held by the crocodile. And that crocodile held him for 1,000 years, Prabhus and Matajis, 1,000 years. And he became so weak, his generals could not save him. His wives told him, you know what, there's only so long we can wait for you. If you're stuck in the river, who's going to take care of us? So we are just all filing for divorce and leaving. And all the wives left. The children, they said, well, between my father and my mother, I tend to gravitate with my mother. And therefore, I'm going to go with mother. So children left him, the wives left him, his generals left him, and he was alone. And in that situation, he was what Bhagavatam says, circumstantially helpless. He was circumstantially helpless. He had nothing left. And at that point, he thought, what am I wasting my time trying to hold on to everyone? Nobody is giving me shelter. So let me pray to Paramparayanam, the source of all shelters. Let me pray. And then Gajendra starts his prayers of surrender. And his prayers of surrender, he does not in not in a single shloka does he use the name Krishna. No, it's unique, The name Krishna doesn't appear in any of Gajendra's shlokas of surrender. But by the end of it, he stopped and he waited. And Prabhupada writes in the purport, all the Devatas, they all waited. Nobody moved. His prayer was an open prayer, right? Whoever is the source of all shelters, come and help me. But the Devatas never moved. Why? Because they knew they were not the source of all shelter. They were not. But they were upset that their names were not called. That's also in the purport. So what happened was Krishna alone as Vishnu came on Garuda and saved Gajendra. But when Krishna came on Vishnu, on Garuda, Bhagavatam tells us all the Devatas also came. And Prabhupada writes in the purport, do you know why the Devatas came? They came because when they saw Krishna coming, they felt very, very, very humbled. They felt very foolish. How could we think that for a moment we could fulfill the desire of Gajendra? How could we think we were the source of all sources? And in that ashamed mood, right, they all repented. And they came with Krishna to show Krishna that he is the source of all sources. When you think you're big boss and you realize the big boss is really big boss, then you walk with your tail tucked between your legs behind the big boss, right? That's exactly what happened when the Lord came down. Such a small point in Gajendra's prayers, but very significant. And it's exactly what Prabhupada is giving us here. And that is why Prabhupada ends the purport. In fact, you will realize one thing. I'm just remembering one point. In the prayers that the Devatas chanted in the 6th canto, 9th chapter, where they prayed that Vritasur must be killed, Prabhupada writes in that prayer, it's in 6.9.48. Wonderful point. Just give me 5 minutes, I'll finish soon. In 6.9.28, right? No, 6.9.48 of Bhagavatam. This is very nice. The Devatas have prayed very hard. And now Krishna he's speaking to them. And he tells them, actually, intelligent demigods, it is true that nothing is difficult for one to obtain when I'm pleased with him. He says that. But for a pure devotee, his mind is exclusively fixed upon me. He doesn't ask me for anything except the opportunity to engage in devotional service. Why do you think Krishna is telling this to the Devatas? Because they are asking for things. You know, sometimes you want to tell someone, why are you doing this? But you don't tell them directly, right? Bhagavatam is also like that. Krishna is nicely telling them that actually pure devotees, they don't ask me for anything. This is just for your info. Nothing, just for your info. That actually they don't ask me for anything. They pray very hard to me, but they don't ask me for anything. Look at the purport. In the purport, right, in the middle of the purport, Prabhupada is more direct than Krishna. Prabhupada says, the Lord wanted the demigods to pray for unalloyed devotional service. Do you see it there? Is it there? You see it, right? But instead, they prayed for an opportunity to kill their enemy. This is the difference between a pure devotee and a devotee on the material platform. Indirectly, look at this. The Lord regretted that the demigods did not ask for pure devotional service. In other words, he wasn't happy, right? But he was indirect about it. So this also tells us something very important. Sometimes when we want to check devotees, we should not be too direct also. If Krishna himself is not so direct, we should also be a little bit loving when we talk to devotees. Cannot raise our voices and scream and shout. That is a materialist way of dealing with devotees. Devotees will never raise voices with each other. Devotees will be loving with each other. Devotees must be careful with each other. That's the first basics of Vaishnava etiquette. We cannot scream and shout at devotees. It's just not acceptable behavior. Do you see Krishna chastising the Devatas? You fools, you rascals, what did you do? There is no prayer in Bhagavatam after the demigods ask for material benefits where Krishna says, I'm very upset with you. No. He gives them everything. Then he says, actually, just for your information, pure devotees don't ask me for anything. And then he goes. He goes. If he can do that, why can't we do that? This is what Bhagavatam in practice is about. Not just reading and then coming out of it. It's how we practice the way we speak. Sometimes we think, why people don't talk to us nicely? We should think about how we are talking to people. We don't see ourselves. Sometimes we think, why my husband is angry with me, why my wife is angry with me. But someone has to play back the recorder at the point when we spoke. And then we realize, oh my God, I sound like that actually. You see? So this is very important. Krishna is so courteous, so wonderful. And therefore we come to the most important point, concluding our verse today. At the end of it all, Prabhupada brings up a very important point. Prabhupada brings up this point. If you look at the purport, Prabhupada brings up the point. For a living entity who desires to return to Godhead, material desires are impediments. The last paragraph is very important. So Prabhupada makes it very clear to us that if we desire to go back to Krishna, if that is our aim, then material desires are actually impediments. It's a fact. But now Prabhupada says something very interesting. A pure devotee of the Lord is therefore not awarded the material benefits that are desired by less intelligent living entities. In other words, if a devotee is serious in Krishna consciousness, even if the devotee in the beginning part starts asking for material desires, in the beginning Krishna may give something. But when he realizes this devotee will be distracted by the material benefit, he will stop it. He will stop it. I think many of us have experienced that. In the beginning when we came to Krishna consciousness, I want this, hey, I got it. I want this, hey, I got it. And then when you talk to devotees, they ask you, Prabhu, you're in Krishna consciousness, how do you like it? You say, very nice, my wife is so nice, my son is so nice, my daughter is so nice, I just got a pay raise, I've got an upgrade in my house. It's all material benefits. And that's why we think, oh, Krishna consciousness is very nice. 2 years later, you ask them, how are you doing? Oh my God, so many times I got slapped by material life. This person did this to me, that person did that to me. And then they start thinking, what is devotional service? But they don't realize that Krishna is cleansing our heart of material desires. And I'm not plucking this out of the blue. And neither is Prabhupada writing that purport without evidence. Go to 5:19-27 and we end today with this shloka. Because this shloka tells us everything about the last point that is in this verse today. 5:19-27 is considered one of the seminal verses in Bhagavatam, but it is understood in confidential circles because not everyone, will be ready to accept this. If you read it, it's very nice. We can chant the shloka. Satyam disati artitam artito nrinam naivarthado yat punar artito yataha swayam vidate bhajatam anichitam ichchapidanam nijapada pallavam. All the shlokas, there are certain meters you can use. You can use this for this shloka. You can do the other way also. Satyam disati artitam artito nrinam naivartado yat punarartita yataha swayam vidate bhajatam anichchatam ichchapidanam nijapada pallavam. So nice, huh? The shlokas are so beautiful. You can sense that Krishna is in the shlokas. That's why today is Bhadra Purnima. Krishna is present in Bhagavatam actually. So to end, Krishna, these residents of Jambudvip, they are chanting this shloka and they instruct us here. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, He fulfills the material desires of a devotee, who approaches Him with such motives. So you see, Krishna first fulfills the desire. But He will not bestow benedictions upon that devotee that will cause him to demand more benedictions. So the moment you are too greedy, Krishna will stop you. But what will Krishna give then? Krishna will willingly give the devotee something more precious, the shelter of his own lotus feet. Even if that devotee is not aspiring for it, Krishna will force feed you. You know how we were force fed by our parents? No, this is good for you, just eat it. And we resisted it, right? But they said, never mind, just eat it. And today we don't, now we realize the value of it. In the same way, Krishna is so kind that He will give you His lotus feet and take away the things that you thought was important to you. And when He does that, the devotee actually gets the Lord's special mercy. This is the special mercy of Krishna, which is why in the purport, very important purport, Prabhupada quotes 2.3.10 of Bhagavatam, Akama sarva kamova, moksha kama udaridihi, tivrena bhakti yogena yajate purusham param. Whether you are a devotee who has no desires, or you're a devotee who has all material desires, or you have just a desire to liberate yourself, sakama bhakta, akama bhakta, in all situations, our sastras tell us, go to Krishna. Now this becomes clearer when we understand this verse today, because the Devatas have admitted, whatever we are giving you, He is giving. So why to come to us? Go to Krishna. Even if you have a material desire, Krishna will purify your consciousness. But the Devatas can't purify your consciousness. Krishna can purify. The Devatas cannot do that. They are not empowered to do that. Oh, Siri is hearing Krishna. So the Devatas, they cannot award us love of God. They cannot transform our material nature to something spiritual. Some of them, like the great Devatas like Lord Shiva, they sometimes turn us to Krishna, but they would prefer that we are just with Krishna. That is their earnest desire for us. So please, let us be clear. It is not that material desires are condemned, number one. Number two, do not become discouraged if you have material desires. Number three, if we do have material desires, do be always conscious that our goal of life is not material desire. 4, if you have material desire and you're struggling with it, what to do? Follow the principles of Bhagavatam. Please perform sincere, loving devotional service and pray to Krishna to remove the material desire. Even if your mind tells you, don't make that prayer, make that prayer. And when you make that prayer, eventually Krishna will act upon it. He will change and transform our hearts. And that's why Prabhupada emphatically says, one should not worship any other entity except the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And how should we worship Him? Tivrena bhakti yogena. Tivrena is like a sharp shaft of sunlight that pierces darkness. That is how our devotional service should be. And if we do it with such intensity, such concentration, such sincerity, Bhagavatam guarantees us. And Krishna in Madhya Leela, Prabhupada quotes him here, Krishna's thinking, what a foolish man this devotee is, coming to me for material desire. I'm not going to give him I'm not going to fulfill his material desire. I'll give him something else. I'll give him the shade of my lotus feet. And when he tastes that lotus feet, he will give up material desires. And that is how slowly we are all becoming transformed by Krishna's mercy, by Prabhupada's mercy. We're becoming transformed because we're able to sit down and hear about Krishna. We want to spend more time with Krishna. So be encouraged. Do not be discouraged. And please respect the Devatas. They're very powerful devotees of the Lord. They teach us many things, but we should know where we stand. And we are supposed to be at the lotus feet of the pure devotees who will direct us to Krishna. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki. Jai Shri Shri Bhadra Purnima ki. And on this auspicious day, let us pray to Jagannath, Baladev and Subhadra that we will enshrine Srimad Bhagavatam in our hearts. That we will really pray very hard and daily study Bhagavatam. And in that way, we pray that Krishna becomes pleased and that Srila Prabhupada becomes pleased. Thank you very much for your time. Sorry I took a little bit more time. Are there questions? Are there comments? Are there realizations? We have a mic here. Devotees, please. We would love to hear you. Yes, Rangamai Prabhu. Prabhu, if you could use the mic, it'll be, maybe we can bring it forward. It's quite long. Is that okay, Prabhu? Oh, it's interesting. This one goes that way and that one comes this side, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. It's okay because this is a good mic. That's not so strong. Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much for a wonderful class, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Prabhu, you made a point with regard to the demigods awarding spiritual benedictions also. And you quoted the example of Lord Shiva and the example of the Brahmana. I just want to know if that is the case with all the demigods or only specific demigods. Because, I mean, when we are preaching to newcomers, and this is a very sensitive topic that we need to deal with, right? So, quite often we are told that it is because of their worship of the demigods that they have been pleased and they have brought them to the platform of Krishna consciousness. Because they themselves regard Krishna as the supreme, so they want to present someone as, oh, here is a nice devotee who can do well in Krishna consciousness.
Yes.
Is that a right understanding or is it...
No, that's not wrong, because there are places where Srila Prabhupada says that the demigods are actually devotees of the Lord. So actually, they would be very happy if we turn to Krishna and pray to Krishna. But if it is in our inclination to pray to them, then they can only award material benefit. But being great exalted devotees, they also pray for our benefit too. So the Devatas are not opposed in any which way if we were to turn to Krishna for love of Godhead. Because they are also searching for it. But because they are in the material world, they are also prone to be in mixed devotional service. That's a very good point, Prabhuji. So I think when we preach, we should be very congenial about this. And I think that's a very sensitive and important point for us to note. Is that helpful, Prabhu?
Sure, thank you very much. Sure.
Anyone else? Yes, Dinabandhu Prabhu. Thank you.
Very wonderful class. So on the point of Gajendra, so you said the demigods were upset at their... So Gajendra said, whoever is in charge, whoever is the supreme, please come and save me. And they were upset that he didn't call them, right?
Yes.
But then you also said that, that other purport of Prabhupada that, we can, we think that we are the proprietor, but the demigods always understand that they are not the proprietors. So then why were they actually upset if they were clear that...
Because they are also conditioned living entities, Prabhu. And they are not perfect. And so while sometimes Prabhupada writes here, they do not forget, I just stated earlier in the lecture that there have been occasions when they have forgotten. Indra forgot, and that's why Govardhan Hill was there. Brahma forgot, and that's why the cows and the gopas were stolen. And in this case of Gajendra, they also forgot. They were overwhelmed by the fact that how come Gajendra did not call for us? But then when Krishna appeared, they immediately came to their senses and repented. And they understood that actually we cannot turn up because we are nowhere next to Krishna. So the Devatas are exalted devotees. But as long as we are in this conditioned 14 planetary systems, we will be subjected to such conditioning. And there will be occasions, as Bhagavatam has shown, when we are prone to forgetfulness. Why? Because we are marginal living entities, Prabhu. And marginal living entities, whether Devatas or whether living entities, we are always prone to be moving here and there. It is the nature of marginal energy. And that's why sometimes we forget that there is a difference between purity and perfection. If we look for material perfection in this world, we will be frustrated. The Devatas are not materially perfect, but their overall mood always pleases Krishna. So even if they make mistakes, Krishna discounts them and continues to keep them and regard them very highly because they have faith in him. But as human beings, the moment we think that they are at a certain level, they cannot make mistakes, when they do, we find it difficult to accept it. Is that helpful? It's a good point. Yes, Mataji.
Harekrishna, Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavads.
The thing is that I just want to ask you to throw some light on Shraddhs.
On?
On Shraddh.
On Shraddh.
Yes.
Okay. What aspect of Shraddh, Mataji? You're talking about the funeral prayers that we do?
We offered the food to our pitras and stuff like how it just plays
in Krishna consciousness. Madhavendra Puri sings very nicely. Sandhya Vandanam. That verse is there. I'll find it for you. In that verse, Madhavendra Puri says, "O ancestors, please wait, because I am no longer offering you any oblations. O Devatas, please wait, because now I am offering everything to that son of the Yadav dynasty, who is known as Yadunandana." So Krishna consciousness tells us that when we are offering everything to Krishna, there is no need for us. Shastras tell us very clearly, especially Bhagavatam, that there is no need for us to actually take up the ritualistic karmakan portion of the Vedas, which designate that we should do the Shraddh, Pindas and all these things. We may have to do it sometimes, Mataji, because we are part of a larger family and they are doing it, and out of respect we will follow it. But as Vaishnavas, all that we offer after a person leaves this world is actually to Vishnu, to Krishna. And that is considered to be the source of all sources. So it's very clear. We don't have to make an offering that way. We can make an offering to Krishna. In fact, Sanatana Goswami has in his treatise given a very elaborate description of how these pindas are offered by Vaishnavas actually. It's slightly different from the way it is done normally. Is that helpful?
It is helpful, but like now when the Shraddhs are starting, everybody starts reading it, and then we are in Krishna consciousness, then where do we stand?
We stand as we are, Krishna conscious. If others are offering it, let them offer. If we have to offer because we are part of a family, we can offer, we can chant Krishna's names and offer. It won't kill our Krishna consciousness. If we are offering as bhoga, then what happens is that what we will do generally is, in temples we do a feast, we remember someone, and we do a feast and feed the Brahmanas and the Vaishnavas. And that prasad actually will be very beneficial for those who are departed. Very straightforward. That's very auspicious. That's a very practical point to keep in mind. Thank you. Ajitananda Prabhu, is there anything that you would like to share with us? You're very kind. But next time we really hope to hear you take a class, Prabhuji. We'll be very happy. Please, please. One more before we end.
Nectar of devotion, it is said that one kind of sevakas in Rasa is demigods.
Yes.
So that means that they have sthayi bhava, that's like permanent emotion, or Srila Prabhupada and Dr. Goswami are referring to those devotees?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the last part, Prabhu.
Does that mean that they have like sthayi bhava, permanent emotion to God? Or does it mean that these are those devotees which are...
Very good point. Now, actually, the Devatas, according to Nectar of Instruction and according to Nectar of Devotion and Bhagavatam, like all living entities, some of their positions, they are actually, for example, Indra may be a personality, but Prabhupada also states that Indra is also a position. Brahma may be a personality, but the post of Brahma is also a service position. But those entities who are very exalted in different universes, they may be promoted to the level of Brahma, which means, Prabhu, that the living entities actually go through a gradual process of increase of their bhav and their devotion to Krishna. And that bhav that is in their heart is a product of the faith that is imbibed in them as they gradually grow within this material universe in the progress of their devotional service. Which is why sometimes we understand that at one moment Indra may be occupying the post, but if his bhav is affected by the material conditioning, you'll find that he becomes disturbed, he becomes neglectful, or sometimes he becomes proud. But because he has the underlying bhav of having faith in Krishna and of wanting to serve Krishna, that bhav ultimately protects him. And that is why Krishna sometimes chastises Indra, but sometimes he also rewards him. That's the best I can do, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu. So let us now let us all rise and let us all sing Gora Arati for the pleasure of their lordships. Jai Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadramai ki. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki. Jai Srila Gurudev ki. Nitai Gaura Premanande.